Greetings, Tezos Nation. Welcome to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Adrian Pocobelli, the artist and broadcaster behind Artist Journal, the YouTube channel focused on the digital art market and collecting on the blockchain. Adrian is joining us today to talk about his journey into the world of blockchain-powered art, where blockchain artists fit into the contemporary art world, and the ongoing evolution of the Tezos art ecosystem. Hi, Adrian. Where are you right now, and how's the weather?
Hi, Stu. Great to be on the program, and thank you for inviting me. And I am in Berlin. It is pretty darn hot here, but not as crazy as yesterday. Yesterday it was 37.
That is hot.
Celsius for Berlin is quite hot, even in the summer.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's not as crazy as Greece, where I have some friends. So it's nice. It's good. And no, north of Europe in the summer is becoming more and more attractive. I was talking to someone yesterday that all of a sudden Norway doesn't sound like such a bad idea anymore.
That's awesome. So, as we always do here on TezTalks Live, can you get the ball rolling by telling us a bit about your personal and professional background?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So as far as personal background, I mean, really, I got started in the arts, visual art specifically, was when I went to the Vatican when I was 6, when my parents took me in Rome, where I have relatives. My dad was from Rome, and he moved to the middle of Canada, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where I was born. And so I was kind of dragged through that museum when I was 6. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't understand really what's going on. But I remember it kind of captured my imagination, though. And even just that whole trip to Italy, I was given the stamp collection of my grandfather, who I never met, who had passed away a couple of years before I was born. And that really got me started, that combination. It was going to Italy, where they love images over there. And in particular, it was, again, stamps and the Vatican, these static, 4 bordered images, so to speak. And so anyway, so I went to visual arts school and did English in university, and then did a master's in English on J.G. Ballard's Atrocity exhibition. And Ballard was kind of a great novelist. He wrote Crash, and his biggest influences were the surrealists and the visual artists. So I had to get to really know surrealism in order to write on Ballard and to decipher really this very, what I consider important but kind of obscure book, The Atrocity Exhibition. And so I did that, and then I became a graphic designer in Montreal after that. I moved to Montreal and to learn basically the basics of making an image beautiful, and also, commercial application. And after that, I moved to Toronto, became an editor at a mining newspaper where I am still with. I'm a podcast host for them on natural resources and geopolitics. And that's kind of like my real gig, so to speak, as far as working. And meanwhile, and then I was doing art. I was painting. I went to the Academy of Realist Art for a few workshops in Toronto to learn how to paint with oils. Moved back to acrylics, and with the iPhone 6S in 2015, late 2015, I started using the phone, developed on my breaks, really, during my lunch hour at the office to pursue my little art dream, and got really into digital because I realized it was an art phone. You could export, there were different apps, and I realized you could do cool stuff with it. It was fresh, small, kind of canvas size. Your finger was the paintbrush, and so it created different kinds of imagery, and I was excited. So all to say, I kept making digital art. I saw Super Rare. I was looking for places to sell it. I didn't understand what Super Rare was at the time. And then I got into crypto just through financial interest in 2020 with many people.
Yeah.
And that's when I understood what, Super Rare and blockchain and crypto and how it worked with digital art. Joined Super Rare. Luckily, I got on right before the tidal wave there. And then after that, I got on to Tezos. A lot of people were encouraged me to get on, and then I got on, and it was really fun. And then after 6 months of being on Tezos on Object, I started to realize something kind of important was going on here. And so I started my video podcast, Artist Journal. We just did episode 435 yesterday, and it's on X and YouTube. And it's been great. It was surprising to me. It was embraced by the community. And so we have a lot of fun, really, every episode. So I still do it. We're going on 3 years in August.
Okay. And as it sounds like your sort of entry point to the blockchain world started around 2020. And yet here you are, as you say, 5 years later, 435 episodes deep on Artist Journal. Given that you're still here actively producing things in the space after all this time, obviously there was something that must have appealed to you personally about what this technology had to offer the world. Can you talk a bit about what appealed to you about the blockchain world and inspired you to become so deeply involved?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, first and foremost, it was the art itself. It was actually the work of Haiti Rocket, who does these kind of glitch ROMs, and I just thought they were really cool. He has a certain vibe to him, and then from there, it was the Kurt Hustle Collective, and all these artists I still like pay close attention to and still buy their works. So the art itself, say, has kept me here. If the art wasn't that great, I wouldn't want to do a show. I wouldn't want to be if I didn't love the art, I wouldn't want to be associated with it, you know. So but now I'm really happy to associate myself with it. I feel lucky to associate myself with really what's going on here, and it feels so. That's one aspect, is the art, probably the most important. Also, I mean, I did well at the start in 2021 on Super Rare, made a ton more money than I'd ever made in physical art. And I did okay in physical art, but nothing like what happened during that bull market, historic bull market, the greatest bull market of all time, I like to call it. And so there is something incredibly powerful about selling a work, and then you just get like whatever it is, 90 to 95% in most cases of the money directly, immediately, with like 10 minutes, right? I mean, that's unbelievable. Nobody you have to convince to get paid for the work you sold. So that was pretty cool. And then finally, from an artist's perspective, what keeps me as an artist like very interested is there's a lot of depth to the market on Tezos. And it's really hard to go to physical art right now because it costs money. Where I have my iPad already, I already have my phone, I already have my laptop, I have the software. So it doesn't cost me anything to make art. And then you have this liquid market, I'd say, like with a certain amount of depth, impressive depth on Tezos, as well as on other chains. But Tezos is, on Object, it's remarkable. And it actually seems to be getting stronger. So yeah, so that's really all those factors together. I mean, as well as there's great people, but what keeps me working, making 435 episodes is ultimately feeling the art's important and that it will stand the test of time.
Okay. And I know you kind of touched on that your journey has sort of led you toward the Tezos ecosystem, but how did you first learn about Tezos and its ecosystem?
It was through X, then called Twitter, during, I think it was late 2021. I'd gotten on Super Rare in October 2020. So it was about a year after. And, at first when I was selling, art, like I didn't really necessarily even believe in the NFT thing, but I thought, okay, if you guys want to give me money, like I'm happy to sell. But then in about, I'd say October 2021, I actually bought one, and then I realized the magic. And then all of a sudden I spent all my money, literally, on NFTs after that. And so someone on X, I think it was Ghost Shoes, and a couple other people, and there's just some talk. Hen had recently actually came down. I came right after, it was like a month after Hen was brought down, or just stopped. And so it was December 2021 that I first minted, finally took the time to figure out, the Kukai wallet at the time. And yeah, and then I kind of got started there. So that's how.
And once you sort of dipped your toes into the Tezos art ecosystem, got your wallet and started participating, what was it about the the Tezos ecosystem and the art community emerging within it that appealed to you and made you want to dig deeper into this particular corner of the blockchain space?
It's a great question, because when you arrive to object not knowing what's going on, it can feel chaotic, right? Or if you come into digital art, and there I was, been making digital art for a while, but there are so many varieties of genres that it takes a while to actually form, like make sense, make order out of the chaos. Like now I've seen enough digital art where I can start to go, okay, there's basically about 7 or 8 categories. You know, there's analog video glitch, there's pixel art, there's glitch ROMs, which is kind of like glitch. You could call it a sub-thing a glitch. There's digital painting, there's digital illustration, there's animated abstract, and on I could go. There's AI. And so, sorry, what was your question again?
What was it in particular about
Oh,
Tezos
right. This is
that
important.
made
Yeah.
you decide to dive into this particular area of the larger blockchain space?
Yeah, it was art. You know, I call it art on the blockchain. Like it was not typical, what's often called crypto art. And the stuff I was seeing in crypto art, I was kind of ambivalent on. I would have never started a show. And I'm happy for people that love it and collect it, and but it just didn't resonate that much with me. But I bought a couple of pieces, right? But it was the work. What was interesting about Tezos or Object was you saw a lot more. There was pixel art, on say ETH and these other chains, of course, but you seem to be seeing something more organic kind of bubbling up from the grassroots that was kind of exciting. Again, you see all of a sudden Haiti Rocket, who had been making for years, and all of a sudden it was just a vibe, really, his work. And it felt like more international as well because of the cheap minting fees on Tezos. It costs 20 cents to mint, whereas on Ethereum, especially back in 2020, I remember spending as high as, I believe, $250 US to mint a work. But if you're selling, I sold a work for $6,000, I was like, well, I guess it's worth it to take this risk. But because of the low minting costs, you got this more kind of organic, global, what I call a visual arts underground. And so all of a sudden you're seeing, it just had a different flavor. There was no gatekeeping, interestingly. And really, you have to give a lot of credit to the designers and really whoever runs Object, that they were able to create a credible platform that still didn't have any gatekeeping. That is not easy. And they pulled it off. And so there was just enough, what I'd call just interesting art that kind of just appealed to me. There's pixel art and this almost underground pixel art thing. And I didn't know what to make of pixel art. I didn't know if it was I thought it was kind of for kids, but but I kind of liked it. I had mixed feelings. And I kind of chronicled this throughout the show. And now it's like, I make pixel art. It's one of my main kind of things I do. So it's kind of interesting. There was a certain quality of the art that stood out, which I think came as a virtue of the lack of gatekeeping and the internationalism. So it became this, in a sense, this international digital art scene, which is quite compelling.
It is. It
Yeah.
definitely is. And as you mentioned, like in exploring that and analyzing that scene, not just here in Tezos, but the sort of larger blockchain art scene, you've now been running your Artist Journal YouTube channel for several years now. And while the show's focus is like multi-chain view of what's happening in the digital and blockchain art space, a lot of the content is focused on things happening here in the Tezos art ecosystem. So for those who might not be familiar just yet, how would you describe Artist Journal?
So Artist Journal is what it says. In a sense, it's my journal as an artist, which I chose. Again, I have kind of a media background. So what's beautiful about the journal format is I can post whenever I want. It's not like a newspaper. I mean, the first 50 shows, I was like, this is not a news channel. It even became a little bit of a meme. This is not a news channel, not a news channel, artist journal. You can post whenever you want. And I also wanted it from an editorial point of view to be whatever I wanted to put on it, because, especially in the arts, you're always told this is what you're supposed to care about. And so finally, and I had all my kind of views, but nobody wants to hear that generally. So finally, I was just like, forget it. I'm putting it online. People can take it or leave it. And I'll have my little testimony there. And then I'll let that do its thing over time, and we'll see if it turns into anything. So it's kind of almost, I wouldn't want to say it's out of resentment, but it was almost out of like, hey, if nobody cares what I have to say, I'm going to put out what I have to say on YouTube. And if 2 people watch, so be it. And but then to the Tezos community's credit, I mean, they kind of embraced it, and they still do. I mean, amazingly, 3 years later.
Okay. And now 3 years later, here you are, as you said, 435 episodes deep. What has it been like spending this much time thinking and talking about digital art?
That's a great question. What's kind of bizarre, to a certain degree, is how little has changed. In a sense, the conviction has grown. The artists have grown with over time as well, because in a sense, they have had 3 years to develop. And I think because we have, as I like to say, like the beating heart of what's happening in this digital art scene is the free market, because they're getting rewarded with money. A lot of these people come from, whether it's Turkey, Argentina, where like getting $5 US for, an edition of 10, and, for each edition, so getting $50 US goes a long way. So I would say, now as far as things changing, like, it's kind of weird. I would say it's become more sophisticated overall, but it's always been pretty sophisticated. Like, it's kind of interesting. Like, in a weird way, the conviction has grown. I mean, amazingly, is what I would say is the biggest change. It's like the conviction, like, and I live in Berlin. I go to in real life art events. Just heard from a commenter, Little Cakes, yesterday, lives in New York. And, we're not super excited when we go out by what we're seeing. And as I like to tell people, like, nothing makes me happier, like, jokingly, than going to an art show I don't love, because then I just feel even better makes me even like more excited, because there's something kind of genuine in the experience that of the work.
So when you're talking about the conviction growing over the time that you've been looking at the space, analyzing what's been going on, analyzing the work that's being produced, the conviction, it sounds like what you're saying, the conviction is that this is where art exploration and exciting things are happening in the art world right now, is in this space specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would go so far as to say it's the most exciting thing happening in the visual arts right now. And in a weird way, I would say, I don't want to say by far, but probably, like, in my mind. I mean, but maybe, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid here, that I'm swimming in the Kool-Aid, so to speak, but
It's hard to know sometimes, right?
Yeah, but I would say, put it this way. If there was a major art institution, whether it was Pompidou in Paris, whether it was the Vatican in Rome, whether it was MoMA or the Whitney, or whatever's in LA, and on and on, I feel I would be more than happy to present and be like, here's what is some of the things that we could do for you here. If we had contemporary art galleries, like the major, I was just talking on the last episode, I was like, this artist, no hygiene. If David Zwirner, one of the top 2 galleries in the world, if they were saying, hey, we watched your show, we like what you have, would you recommend someone? I was like, this is the artist who I'd give them. And I think it would be a nice fit, so it's quite fun in that regard. Again, I kind of come out of the contemporary art scene. I've been in Berlin now for almost 9 years in September. And I've seen, like, and it's a tough business, like there's not few successes, few sales. And and that's not just me. Like I've seen about 2 people, like what I'd say, make it since I got here. That's not very, and you compare it to what's happening on Object. It's like, well, you just made $100 today selling your art. I mean, that's pretty darn good. It's better
Yeah.
than most of the people I know, and they're spending all their money at the supply store and hoping that the person that wanted to buy their art is still going to pay them and that it's still going to happen. I was just listening to that story from an art friend here yesterday. Real world anecdotes.
Mm. So
So yeah,
go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so again, I think that free market is feeding this whole thing and
Mm.
is really the fundamental thing that is helping it, in my universe, triumph over the current, situation about having to go to the right art school. And, in
Mm.
Germany, it's all about having the right art professor is like the, somehow determines how good of an artist you are. And like a lot of these people who are great artists, they come from like, middle of nowhere, in the rural parts of countries that you've never been to,
Yeah.
and rarely hear about.
Well, I mean, I do hear that a lot where what's sort of been created is a space where people who want to focus on art are able to focus on art and sort of keep the lights on while they do that because there is a market for the stuff that they're producing, and that gives them the time to really explore what they can do, right?
Yeah. And the encouragement. I mean, it's an important thing because as an artist, you can feel like, it's not hard for you to get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm not sure, to get discouraged, right?
Yeah.
And so if you are discouraged, it can literally be one day where all of a sudden you post a work and you haven't posted for a while, and all of a sudden you sell out within like a couple of hours and you just made $100.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I want to do that again. Right?
Yeah.
So it's this kind of financial incentive. It's kind of, again, bringing a free market back into it, whereas it's really hard in the physical, art scene. There's shipping, which costs, huge amounts of money. There's tax. I mean, there's tax. I don't know how it works with tax, actually, as far as crypto. But as far as like, there's the VAT here. I mean, Italy just reduced its VAT from 22% to 5%. So yeah, I mean, on physical. So it's just so much simpler, and it's very encouraging to actually get some money, put some money in your pocket,
Well,
you know.
that's definitely one kind of encouragement, but another kind of encouragement is the support from the community and support from people like you and shows like Artist Journal. So as you're looking at the work being produced and the people producing it, what's your process for choosing the pieces that you curate for the show?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like technically speaking, it's subjective, right? But in my world, it's objective. Like I don't even like. I was just commenting the other day. It's like, oh, I'm impressed how that person was on the show so much, because for me, it's not like. I mean, I started with stamps at like 6 years old, and all I would do on the weekends, actually, almost in all my free time, is I would just stare at these things and I'd rearrange them. Then I went to trading cards, and I did that for years, staring at them basically and rearranging. I was slightly outside the city in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. There's nothing to do.
Hmm.
And then I did that with comics. So I literally, I've spent so much time looking at and just analyzing, rearranging, that I call it the reptilian moment, that I know within half a second, generally. Sometimes it's challenging, the works. So that can, there are, just like music, there are some of your favorite albums can take time. So
Yeah.
that happens. But there are many works which I just know within half a second that, okay, check. Like it makes all my requirements to go, this is a classic work of art that I can put and not be ashamed about,
Hmm.
in my own mind.
Okay. And as somebody who is producing content kind of at scale that's focused on this medium and this community and what's going on in this scene, um What has the response to your show been like from the people that make up that community?
I would say it's been, for me, shockingly positive. It's, again, like I have lots of opinions on art, but nobody really. I mean, part of the reason I started that show is because nobody really asked or wanted to know, and I'm overgeneralizing. But to generalize, that was kind of like somewhat true. And so it's been shockingly wonderful. It's changed my life in a lot, at least like my internal life. And I'd say it's made me a happier person because the reaction is often like almost every time I put an artist at the start the show. I call it the headline, so to speak. I call it the newspaper of the imagination, really, is another kind of way I describe the show. I almost every time I hear from the artist, they'll post like, "Thank you, Pocobelli, for putting my work and starting the show with my work. It's an honor," and this sort of thing. And people, if they see their works, they tweet it out, and so it becomes this kind of virtuous circle where
Mhm.
I put it in media, and I just go, "Here's the," since it's I put together my little newspaper of the imagination made of all these images. And then they're happy that it's in there, and then they retweet it with a link to the show so you can watch it or with a clip. And so it becomes this virtuous circle. So overall, I'd say it's overwhelmingly positive.
I
Uh,
wouldn't be surprised by that at all. I imagine if you're a person who is producing art, to go on this YouTube channel and see somebody talking about what you've made and analyzing what you've made, that's probably a fascinating thing to watch.
yeah, it's funny. Like there was an artist, Popple. I wish he'd put out more work, but who put out a lot of work early on. This great pixel artist, and he'd always be like, "Look, Mom, I'm on TV," like this sort of thing. Like to your point. Yeah, it's kind of like. And because of it's been around for a while and there is an awareness of the show, it's kind of become one of the main shows, so to speak, to have your art on. So if you're on, it's like yay. So it's great. It's like this again, this virtuous circle.
Okay. And do you think that your sort of efforts to explore the space deeply have driven your making of the art that you produce, or is it the other way around?
That's a really fun question. Yeah, it has changed. Put it this way, I've added series to my work. Like I have the first collection I started on Object was called the Pixel Art Sketchbook. And that was basically because I saw enough pixel art that I realized I like this stuff, and I was like, it sells well, it looks cool. I'm an artist, like I should definitely just have something over here, and I
Mm.
wanted to actually produce something around that. So yeah, so the pixel art sketchbook, where and kind of the magic in that one is really using the stylus to draw with pixelation. So you get this kind of contrast between the kind of rectilinear geometric perfect forms with the looseness of the hand. And so that becomes it creates this kind of contrast, which kind of creates a lot of the beauty and the pleasure in design and in art. So definitely that series. But yeah, even like you see the glitch artists. So there's, influence.
Mm.
Definitely. Like I've become, I made digital art. The challenge before me learning about, say, super rare and crypto and, object, as a digital artist was how am I going to make this physical? And if you look at old digital art, like what you'll see is it's like printouts, it's screen prints. Like if you go to the Digital Art Museum here in Berlin, and so now, as a result of this scene and being kind of neck deep in this scene, I've become very digital as an artist, digital first, you might say. Uh, Whereas before I was kind of like a hybrid. I use the phone as a compositional tool, still do,
Yeah.
but that would always be with the goal of how am I going to make this physical so I can actually sell it and make a name for myself,
Mm.
so to speak. So I would say mostly in the pixel art and maybe a little bit of the glitch areas.
Okay. And for those interested in checking out your work and Artist Journal, where can those two things be found?
Right. So my work, I guess the easiest way would be to go to my profile on X, slash, I guess would be slash at Pocobelli, is so my last name.
Mhm.
You can also put Adrian Pocobelli into Google, but I have a link to all of my different projects. But basically on YouTube, you can do a search on Artist Journal and it'll show up in the first like 5 or so. You'll see the actual channel.
Mhm.
You can also put Adrian Pocobelli in, and you can also go to my website, pocobelli.net, and you'll
Okay.
also see all my series that I do there. And you'll also see a link to the links, and that'll take you to everything.
Gotcha. This is all great stuff so far. I'm excited to learn more. But before we dive into the nitty gritty, are you ready for the world famous TezTalks lightning round?
I can't wait, actually. I have no idea what you're going to say, so I'm excited.
Fabulous. Then it's lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers. This is just for fun so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you a night owl or an early riser?
Early riser.
Exercise or naps?
Exercise.
Movies or video games?
Neither.
Neither. That's a first. What's your favorite country to visit for a vacation?
Greece.
Nice. If you were elected king of the world, what's the first thing you would do?
Ooh, I would probably do, that's a really hard question. I would, let's say I would remove all taxes on art creation. So you pay no income tax if you make your money through art.
Okay. Name one thing you will never do again.
I will never drink wildly again. I drink, the older I get, the less I drink. Let's put it that way.
Okay. What's the secret to happiness?
I actually thought I figured this out. I actually said the other day, but let me see if I can remember. Oh, I know what the secret to happiness is. It's 45 minutes of exercise in the morning.
Okay. Do you have any pets?
No, but I love cats.
And finally, what is your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Make art on my phone.
Awesome. Those are excellent answers. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Let's get back into it. Now that we've talked about your personal journey into the digital art space and where it's led you, I'd like to zoom out a little bit and pick your brain about the state of sort of blockchain powered art more broadly, if that's all right. First off, what is the emergence of, I know you did touch on this a little bit, but what's the emergence of blockchain powered art as a medium for creating and marketing art meant for artists like you around the globe?
It's really, I mean, the word that comes out, I'm still in the lightning round here. I'm thinking emancipation. It's been
Okay.
a kind of emancipation. It's been a freedom, so to speak, to sell your art to a real market, make money, and it's there's no gatekeeper.
Hmm.
The only gatekeeper is yourself. At the end of the day, what's beautiful about, say, making art, especially on Tezos and Object right now, the blockchain in general, you could say, but especially on Object, is if you can make art that people like, and if you do it consistently and you keep doing it and you keep evolving, and you will be rewarded. Like, there is a market there for you and you will be rewarded. Like, people will spend their money on it. And so it's changed my life, and I've been an artist my entire life, and it's completely changed it. And so you got a lot of bad press among artists in like the whole NFT thing in 2021. A lot of people lost money and all this sort of thing. But overall, I still encourage people, to, take a look.
Okay. And when people do take a look, what is the current state of the digital and blockchain art space in 2025 as you see it?
It's quite interesting from a content perspective. I would say it's never been better. The artists continue to get better. From a market perspective, it is remarkably interesting, particularly in 2025. I mean, you have Raoul Pal out from Real Vision pumping what I'd call crypto art, traditional, more kind of Ethereum based art that you'd see in like the Taschen book, for example, that came out on NFTs. But what you're seeing is he's very much like, I don't know if I'd call it pumping the scene, but he's very much speaking enthusiastically about
Mhm.
crypto art. And I think there's a bit of, I call a lot of what I see in the international arts, digital art scene is more art on the blockchain is how I like to refer to it, because it's not, crypto art gives a certain kind of feel, and it's more thematically based on, almost what I'd say somewhat Ethereum kind of values and paradigm.
Mhm.
Whereas, so what we're seeing is a remarkable resilience in the market right now. And I'd even say there's a bit of a fire underneath it. The secondary and even the primary works by artists who have been producing for years now are selling out immediately. And then there's a strong secondary for older works. It's still remarkably small, but it is growing and people are commenting on it. I'm
Mhm.
commenting on it in my show. Other people are like, I'm seeing the same thing. And I wonder if it's, you see Bitcoin going to new records here. And if there's also, I think part of it, almost back to Raoul Pal, it's sort of like there's not much you can do with crypto. Like there's DeFi, and then there's like digital art. I mean, there's a lot of other use cases in theory, but as far as what people actually use it for, it's like money transfer, lending, staking, and like digital art. And
Mhm.
maybe there's a few others, that people practically use it for, but I'd say those are the main. And so I think there's kind of like, I think there's a bit of there's some more attention being put onto the art scene in digital art. We're starting to see almost what I'd call like a second wave of interest. It seems to be kind of, there's an excitement that seems to be underlying the market right now, which I'd say has been growing from the last 4 months.
Okay, and with that sort of second wave building and that excitement sort of growing, like in my like I've talked to a lot of people in the blockchain art space, and in those conversations I've heard this recurring theme about this kind of art needing something of a rebrand. The NFT hype cycle, which you touched on, is kind of a double edged sword, where it brought a lot of attention to this space, but it also kind of skewed perceptions of the value of the work being produced. And now we're at this place where amazing work is being produced at an impressive rate by extremely talented people, but it's all happening sort of in the shadow of the rise and fall of the NFT.
Mm.
What do you think needs to happen for the art being created here now to set itself apart from that perception?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and I've actually discussed it in depth on my show repeatedly. And the way I kind of see it is I don't like the word NFT from a branding perspective because of all the basically negative associations. Like, I mean, I talk to a lot of curators and artists in the contemporary art scene, and you say, "Oh, I do, art, NFTs." They immediately think Bored Ape Yacht Club. They immediately think, some artists that did well, Beeple,
Mm-hmm.
right? And nothing wrong with people or whatever, but not everybody in the contemporary art scene will necessarily love curators. Like there's a certain kind of feeling to that work that often gets dubbed crypto art
Yeah.
that they don't like to generalize. And so, and I'm even, as I was almost saying before, like I never would have started a show if it was based on, say, the Taschen book, what came out, which often gets celebrated. Uh, so I call it art on the blockchain. Is really that's more the international movement, which basically, without all the, like, in a sense, crypto art, which is I associate with NFTs, generally speaking, is
Mm-hmm.
art that is embraced by the culture of crypto, right? And what the culture of crypto, and as I point out, like it's all fine and good, and I think it's great, and I think if people are expressing their love for art, this is great. But if be careful if you're investing, because you're ultimately, at the end of the day, you're following not necessarily super high-end art consultants, you're following up ultimately cryptocurrency speculators over there as far as what's being decided is, the ultimate canon, so to speak. So I kind of like to call that over there crypto art, and then there's art on the blockchain. And I think the way that you bridge over to what you might call traditional or in order to kind of bring on the masses who maybe have negative connotations towards what they saw in 2021. One of my missions of several, is to get the art that we see, art on the blockchain, into the hands of people who are enthusiastic in the traditional art scene, into traditional collectors' hands who want some digital but are just not aware of what's happening. That's part of why I do my show. It also gives press to these artists so that people can start to learn about these artists. It takes time. You can't learn about it in half an hour. It takes repeated viewings, right? So I think the real way to do it is, frankly, you just bypass the crypto art scene and you just go straight to the trad art scene and say, hey, I think I have some art that will appeal to you here. And I think there is art that will appeal to what you might consider to be what I'd call traditional sensibilities in the arts, in visual art. There is a whole stuff, but it's still the visual arts underground, so to speak. So it's actually, it makes the show really exciting in that regard, because I feel like there is a message to tell, and it just needs to be told. And I think if you tell it well enough and often enough to the right people in the traditional area, they will start to get on board. And I think if they're on board and they start showing this work, then I think like the world, they can kind of put to bed the whole kind of, this crypto thing, which any word itself has somewhat of mixed, connotations to people. It evokes emotion. People can be arguing over it, even still. So I think, artists like my trad art friends, they're curious.
Yeah.
But they're still not they're not banging down my door like they were in 2021 saying, how do I get on this thing?
Okay. And within that, I know you mentioned it just now as sort of these artists who are producing blockchain art existing in the visual art underground. Is that where these artists belong in the contemporary art world? Like, is the expectation that this will be the sort of visual art underground for a while, or do you expect them to transition into more of the mainstream scene?
That's a great question. That's like the $64 billion question, really. I think there is an inevitability about it, I think. And so the question is, in a sense, like, will it be 6 months, 6 years, 20 years? It's kind of back to how I was describing when I go out. I'm not super excited, generally speaking, when I go out to in real life art events, to overgeneralize. Sometimes there's works I love, and I don't want to, cast shade, right? But overall, the excitement is completely, definitely there. It's the new medium. It's the medium of now. There are young people. It's kind of punk, but it's sophisticated. They are aware. I help make them aware, those who watch, of the things that are happening. So, and in this world, things can happen pretty darn fast, right? Like with virality and media being what it is. So how long is it going to, I do think it will happen, just because I kind of grew up around this stuff and images and history of art and everything. It's just the obvious next thing. That's why I spend so much time in it. If I didn't think it was, I guess I would think that, but if I didn't think it was, I wouldn't spend so much time in it, because I dedicate, I make 3 shows a week on this stuff. So yeah, I think it just becomes, but it's, as I like to say, like, it's a different visual language than traditional painting. It has some, it's like a parallel scene. It's a new medium. It's actually radically different from painting, even though it shares certain properties. Like, okay, now we have a stylus, and okay, we have this almost virtual painting that we do. But the fact that you have layers, like, that you can turn on and off,
Yeah.
there's undo, there's, you can just save as, and then go back 5 steps or do an experiment. You can remix really easily. It's kind of like techno in music,
Yeah.
you know? So it's kind of like techno, like, so I think it's going to be slowly and then all at once, so to
Okay.
speak. Like whenever the dam bursts, it's not going to take too many shows because these institutions, I would argue, like they keep on showing these modernist shows, like the endless Picasso shows that we're subject to, and Matisse, and and you could just go with the abstract expressionists, and I love the surrealists, but in a sense, we've seen this all to death. And interestingly, I'd say the contemporary art scene, because of its somewhat, I mean, they call it ultra contemporary now, which I don't think is really catching, but they're trying to push those, at least in the media and whatnot. I There's still, like, you see these, like, there's going to be like Banksy and Cause, these kind of like guys who just kind of won over the masses. Uh, but generally speaking, I just don't see that much. I think the excitement is with the new medium, kind of as it always has been. Like I find it very analogous and similar to the Impressionists in the 1880s or 1870s, like the early years of Impressionism. And that didn't happen overnight. Like
Mm.
it took years for it. And then, and here we are a century later, like there's a Pizarro show here at the, nearby here in Potsdam. So we're looking at it 145 years later. Oh, that could be the same thing here.
Hmm.
We'll have a Yuri J show, 145 years from now,
And
and that'll just be normal.
and as that's unveiling itself, however long it takes, what's next for Adrian Pocobelli? Do you have anything exciting in the works?
Yeah, I almost have too much going on here. I'm working on a book proposal, actually unrelated for the most part, but there is interest. So I'm working on a book proposal right now. I actually have a gallery. Object gave me a gallery. They have something like 20, 25 galleries. They offered me a gallery, which was really nice. And so the Pocobelli collection, I call it. We've put out 2 shows. We're going to do another show in the end of July, and then another at the end of August, and another early October. So that's a fun kind of side project. I'm working on a solo show, and I probably can't say for who yet, but I'm working on solo show, digital art gallery show that I hopefully will be up in the next 6 weeks. And and then I do the show, right, which is 3 times a week, which is its own kind of conversation.
Hmm.
I'll probably move out of Berlin October 1st. I gave notice, so I have to kind of figure out where I'm going to end up. I'd like to end up in Paris. It's expensive though. So I might as I tell people, I might take a year or two, go nomad for a bit because I have
Hmm.
remote work. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's next is the art
Awesome.
shows, the galleries, continuing the video journal.
Sounds exciting. And we could go on all day, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time here. To all our viewers, thanks for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks. We'd love to hear from you. Adrian, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks taking time out of their busy lives to keep the blockchain-powered art world moving forward and sharing its creations with the world. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we sign off here?
I just want to say thank you, Stu. Thank you to you, and thank you to TezTalks, Tezos Commons, Tezos Foundation, everybody there. Thanks for having me on
Our
and
pleasure.
asking what I have to say. And actually, I'll have the Pixel Art Inferno. That will also be released at some point here. That's on Bitcoin. And yeah, so there's lots going on. And so anyways, exciting times here. Check out the YouTube. If you don't know where to start, check out the YouTube. I try and make it pretty accessible.
Okay. To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guest has been Adrian Pocobelli. Now let's go check out Artist Journal.